Hello and welcome to another segment of Interviews That Matter. I'm your host Raj Mehta. Friends, in this segment we bring those guests who influence our lives. This includes elected officials, policymakers, heads of major organizations and other dignitaries. It is my sincere hope that the knowledge brought in by these guests will help our community. Continuing with our CEO series, we have today Michael Faltischek. He is the senior partner of the law firm Ruskin Moscow Faltischek. Michael, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much for having me.
Appreciate your time. I've known you for a long time, but I just wanted to, for the viewers' benefit, if you can give me your background. I know you're a lawyer and I know you're a prominent attorney in Long Island, a senior partner. So now, how did you start at that?
Well, I guess going back to my roots, I've been committed to Long Island since I came to this country when I was 4 years old. Grew up in Queens, went to school in Queens, public schools, went to college in New York City, Pace College, accounting, Brooklyn Law School at night. I did work while I was in law school as a teacher in Brooklyn. And when I graduated law school, I decided to make a commitment to Long Island. And I came straight out here and started working with a couple of guys. We were in the basement of a building on Old Country Road. Interesting experience in the early years. We took on a lot of what I consider to be unique, challenging opportunities in representing people in the municipal sector, in the student government sector, in litigation, and slowly into the business and corporate world. It was fun times. I would say we worked 20 out of 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Wow.
And scratched out a living, so to speak. And we made a commitment to growth over the years and kept finding good, talented people. Our mantra was always to find people that were smarter than us, which proved to be somewhat difficult, but not overwhelming, and attracted a lot of good talent, good lawyers, and grew the firm from where we started to today a 60-person law firm with 125 employees, very solidly based on Long Island, good client base, broad spectrum of legal services that we offer in every field other than some of the highly specialized areas. Personal injury we don't do, medical malpractice we don't get involved with, patent work, the real patent work we don't get involved with. But other than that, we've pretty much done everything there is to do. And the challenge was always being able to do that which you hadn't done before. I think as a growing business, and law is no different in many respects than other businesses, you need to be able to accept the challenge, look for the challenge, and be able to succeed. Sometimes you'll stumble, sometimes you'll fail, sometimes you'll walk away with a bloody nose, but you'll have learned something and you will be better for it and be able to continue to grow that business and build on what the strengths are and be able to transfer those strengths to the others who are around you.
When you say you accept challenge and then you work on it, many of the entrepreneurs have a problem getting that challenge. Like, for example, if in our field, like I'm in technology field, right, and we do few things, we do a lot of things, but let's say, for example, if a client doesn't come and give and have a trust in us and gives us a challenging work, we don't know, we don't get it. So everybody looks for, like, prior experience. Everybody looks for, okay, what have you done for before? So how do you get that challenge?
One of the challenges in the service sector, you, me, accountants, It's based on relationships. It's based on talking to people. It's trying to empathize with what their issues are.
Right.
And when you establish relationships with people, you try to learn who they are, what they do. And you can offer what you have as almost as a challenge to people, and offer to do something maybe for far less than its fair value, because you want to prove to them that you can add value. And in the service world, it's critical that you are adding value. There are thousands upon thousands of lawyers, software developers, technical people, accountants. What differentiates any one from the others is the willingness to commit to the needs of the person who seeks service. Has to go above and beyond. It can't just be what anybody else can offer.
Right.
And to me, that has largely been creativity. Most people know the law. You go to law school, you learn law. The first thing you learn in law school is where to find the law. So in case you don't know it, you always know how to find it. But knowing the law and being able to find the law are just the beginning. How you apply it becomes the more critical element. And that's where the creative part comes in. Being able to see where a given situation has opportunity, where it adds value to the goals of the individual you're doing the service for. And I think that's true in any area, frankly. Whether it's service-oriented, product-oriented. There are lots of cars. Why do people choose one car over another? Advertising is an element. Right. Reputation is an element. But very often, put two things next to each other or three things next to each other to choose from. You'll choose the one that seems to have the most creative element to it, that is most appealing, is most attractive, and offers you something that somebody else doesn't have to offer.
Relationship, which is what the most important thing that you mentioned, right? So in a startup, when you started up this business or law in a firm, obviously you had zero relationship. So you had to go out and get your first client.
Yes.
How was that?
Interesting. While I had no relationships, I had friendships that had been built up over the years. Just college friends, law school friends, camping friends, people who I had come in contact with, who I would socialize with. And they thankfully had enough confidence in me and in what I could offer that if they saw something, they would recommend that person to me. And that's often led to lifelong relationships in the legal field and in the services I render. I cannot point to clients that I've lost to any degree that are attributable to something that I can't even quantify.
Right, yeah. So you already began with your prior relationships in the college or whatever, and that's how you started your law firm with a couple of other people, and then you grew it to this whatever stage you have today, right? So obviously, every stage has its own challenges. Like, when you grow from 2 people to 20 people, and 20 to 40 people, what was, can you describe us that? How, I know that you mentioned that you found the talented people and start hiring, but you still have to do the payroll.
I think the one word I would say is willingness to take risk.
Okay.
If we saw someone who had quality and potential, we were willing to take the risk of whatever might happen in terms of our cash flow, because we thought that the person would enhance the cash flow over the long term.
Mm-hmm.
And it is a long-term view. It's not a, okay, sit down at the desk, next week you produce enough money to make a profit. Doesn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
It's an investment in time
Mm-hmm.
and effort in every person you bring into a service business.
Right.
And you have to be willing to wait out the time
Mm-hmm.
to build this successful practice, this large, broad base
Mm-hmm.
that we've created today.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, willing to take a risk. That was the biggest thing I guess.
The biggest thing is taking the risk, yes.
Right.
Even for me,
Yeah.
take a risk to hang out a shingle and start a law practice versus going to work for the government or the jobs that might be available and being an employee.
Mm-hmm.
There's,
Mm-hmm.
it's different challenge, different willingness to do things.
Mm-hmm.
And that comes from my family background because my parents, who are Holocaust survivors, they traveled from Europe to China to Dominican Republic to the United States eventually.
Oh.
They were hand laborers, but they were entrepreneurial in the sense that eventually my father, who was a barber, ended up owning a barber shop.
Mm-hmm.
My mother, who was a beautician, ended up owning a beauty parlor. I watched them do these things. I worked in those stores. I did everything that was necessary, from sweeping up the hair to making sure there was enough shampoo, to washing hair, to drying hair, to sitting at the cash register. All those things in my youth, before I even went to college, to have this sense of what is it to be an entrepreneur, to take the risk, to have the drive, to have the confidence in oneself, to be able to achieve more than just the physical labor you were capable of, or the legal skill practice you can apply. It takes something a little more.
So entrepreneurship is in your blood, basically. That you
I
have been
guess in retrospect, yes.
Yeah, right? Yeah, and your father came here when you were 4, as I
Yes.
see that, right? And you moved from Dominican
Dominican
at
Republic.
that time?
I was born in the Dominican Republic.
Oh, you were born in Dominican Republic?
Yes.
Oh, okay. And then he moved to United States
Yes.
and Brooklyn.
Queens.
Queens. Oh, Queens.
That's
okay.
that's also Long Island.
That's also Long Island. It used to be Long Island. Right, yeah. So, so from there are two sets of people, right? One is the people who has the genes of entrepreneur, and ones who doesn't have, and they want to do something on their own.
That's a great debate. I recently read an article on that very subject as to whether entrepreneurs are born or they can be made. And whether you call it entrepreneurs or great lawyers or great accountants, great software developers, designers, it's somewhere in between. There's a fundamental that you need to be exposed to when you grow up that would differentiate you, that gives you the appetite. But certainly many people learn. And they learn what the components of a business are. One of the other things I did when I was young was, I guess it was in high school. Goes back 1963. It was the reason it sticks out in my mind is it was right at the time of the Cuban Missile Crisis, and everybody was very nervous and scared. My parents were concerned. So I was at that night. I was at a meeting of Junior Achievement. Junior Achievement is an organization that was established to give young people an opportunity to learn what it was to create and run a business. So you would join, and you would be challenged to come up with an idea and build a business around it and try to generate revenue from it, maintain books and records, just really be an entrepreneur.
Right.
And that was a tremendous learning experience for me as part of the process of being a businessman. So I think success is a combination of entrepreneurial spirit and interest, creativity to have the differentiator ideas, and being a solid businessman. They're all components of a successful business enterprise.
Also, you know, people surrounding you makes you also, takes a big part in you, basically. Is that?
Well, I always feel I'd rather be around people who are smarter than me, because then I can keep learning. And I learn from those experiences. A growth-oriented business can never survive on its founder alone. You'll see that more often than not, businesses that are dominated by the founders fail. They just fail because they don't have the broad skill set, the broad range, the broad vision to take a small idea and make it a big enterprise. A story I always tell my entrepreneurs, whether it's in the Angel Network context or at Stony Brook, where I'll lecture from time to time on entrepreneurship.
Right.
Fellow I was representing when I was young, first early stages of practice, had developed an idea, patent, sought out patent counsel that I work with, filed tremendous patents. I mean, those patents covered the largest filing in the history of the United States, with the most patent claims ever filed in a technological field. And it was brilliant. It was revolutionary. It was a game changer, complete game changer. We filed the U.S. patents. We were able to get a large company interested enough to undertake and underwrite the development of a prototype and filing worldwide patent rights. And when the prototype was finished and was turned on, boy, it worked. It really worked. And so now you embark. What's the next step?
Right.
You can go many different ways. You can raise lots of capital to manufacture the product, or you can take the rights you have and what you have in your head and license them. So it was clear that the capital investment in manufacturing was obscene. It's over the top. Couldn't be done. And the applications were across a spectrum of products that you had already existing large manufacturers that you couldn't start up and compete. So you license. You license it to all of these companies that make these products. And in the negotiations for the license, it ultimately broke down because the inventor wanted a nickel a unit. And we were talking about billions and billions of units.
Wow.
And they were only offering them either a penny or two. And the application of the patents never saw light of day. So here you have brilliance, creativity, entrepreneurship, but total failure because couldn't take the advice of businessmen who could guide him and kind of allow him to take advantage of the opportunity.
So that's why there are many brilliant people, but they can never be a good entrepreneur.
That's probably true.
Right? And then there are many entrepreneurs who cannot be that brilliant. There has to be a mix of both.
It does. You don't have to be brilliant to be a good entrepreneur.
You don't have to be a...
You know, there are many, many business opportunities that are so fundamental, right down to the most fundamental of all, a candy store. Client of mine supplies the candy to an entrepreneur who has stores,
right.
Times Square, hotels in Las Vegas, the airports, and it's a candy store. You walk by. People just swarm into it. All they have is every candy that's made.
Right.
And the kids love it. The parents love it. And, you know, here it's a great idea. So there's a business that he set up based on something very common.
Any startup business, right? Let's say if someone wants to start a business, where should they begin? and what are the challenges of a startup? Because I know you're involved in many startup business and also involved in the angel network. So we'll talk about the angel network. I mean, it's a part of this anyway.
It is, but
yeah.
What I would recommend to anyone who is looking to start a business
Right.
is first understand the fundamentals of being in business.
Right.
What's really involved? What are the responsibilities you have? What is the structure you're going to use? Who is your competition going to be? And you need to evaluate those things. You need to realistically evaluate what is it going to cost to take whatever it is you want to do to market. What kind of dollars do you need behind you? What are the different ways you can get those dollars? Who do you get them from? Try to identify those things. You need to be a pretty good public speaker at the outset if you're going to be seeking to raise capital. You have to have presence of mind, real knowledge. You have to be able to convince people, and it's true whether you're asking somebody to make a capital investment or you're going to go to a lender. And I'm starting a business, I'd like to borrow money. Well,
Right.
you need to be able to demonstrate to these people that it's not just an idea, it's a workable idea. You know all the different component parts of how to make it work. You know how to reach out into the marketplace to achieve your results. And you need to have the drive to follow through on it. You can't wake up Monday morning and say, this is a great idea I have, I'm going to follow through, and then Thursday morning say, I'm going to look up and see whether there's any competition out there. And then a week and a half later sit down and say, let's see, what are the component parts? You can't do something like this piecemeal, part-time. It has to be front and center. You have to live it, you have to breathe it, you have to be committed to it in a way that it definitely comes first. If it doesn't, that's going to come across to other people, and they're not going to be interested in providing you with any kind of financing. Because if you're not committed to it, why should they be committed to it?
Right.
Because they face risk. There's this capital risk, dollars. The entrepreneur startup, it's life risk. But you know what? The guy who's putting up the money doesn't want to just throw it away to someone who really doesn't have commitment to what he's going to do.
So, in other words, business plan is the most important thing that you have.
You need, well, it ends up being in the form of a business plan, yes.
Right, yep, which has all the components that you just described.
Yes.
And once you have the business plan, once you know your competition, once you know how to market your stuff, who to market, and where to market, then you can go to this for raising funds. And what are the funds needed, all that kind of thing, right?
Well, you need to be able to plan out what it is you need to succeed. How is that money going to be spent?
Right.
And that all falls into the business plan.
Right.
That is the ultimate comprehensive place where you will put everything that I've described. And the business plan is not just a PowerPoint that you throw up on the wall.
Right.
You need to be able to sit down and write it out. There are resources that are available on the web, easily found in terms of the outline for a business plan. What is its what are its contents? You need to be able to present something through the business plan that will capture someone's imagination and say, gee, this is a good idea. I'd like to pursue it.
So, an entrepreneur, now we talked about, has an idea, has drawn a business plan. Now, obviously, there are two types of somebody, two people can, I mean, in my mind, that let's say, for example, you're working in one particular industry for 5-10 years. Now, in and out of that industry or that particular business, rather, then you start your own business. That's one way to do it, right? Second way to do it is like you invented something which is supposed to be a very big benefit for large number of people, and then you start your business.
Two different
things.
Two completely different situations. Yes.
Right. So now, next thing is, like, obviously, everyone needs to raise money. Without money, nothing happens. How do you go about raising? I know that you are involved in Long Island Angel Network, and Long Island Angel Network does fund some of those businesses. Tell us about Long Island Angel Network and how do they go about investing money?
Well, okay. Let me give you a little sense of the Angel Network itself.
Right.
It's been in existence now for 6 years on Long Island. Angel investing has been around probably for as long as investment opportunities have existed. There are generally recognized stages of investment. The first stage being what's called friends and family. The next stage would be angel investing. A next level would be either venture capital or private equity or family office. Those would be instances of larger amounts of capital being invested in businesses. And then at the back end you have an IPO, public offering, if that's appropriate. So those are the life cycles of raising capital, and different businesses require different levels of capital to be raised. In the first instance, when you have an idea and you need to raise these rounds of capital, and I guess I can add one more level, which is close to friends and family, and that is seed capital. We do have on Long Island several seed capital funds, people who would put up very small amounts of money, $25,000, $50,000, $100,000, to help an entrepreneur with the basics, to help them have enough money to be able to live and pay for services to develop a business plan. Because not everybody who has an idea has the capability of doing that first step, the business plan.
Right. And
they will look for and seek help and guidance. There are resources on Long Island for that, for the entrepreneur, either at Stony Brook or at other educational institutions on Long Island. Farmingdale, Hofstra, Delphi, all have resources to aid in that fundamental start. There's also Launchpad, which is a co-working environment that is starting to spread on Long Island. They're based in Mineola, Huntington, Stony Brook, probably Great Neck very soon as well. And they afford an individual an opportunity to develop the idea that they have, to test market, so to speak, whatever the case may be. And in each instance, it's something that should be unique. Once this is put together, then the skill set of going out to try to convince someone to put money in comes into play. Right. I'm sure people have had the occasion to either hear of or watch Shark Tank on TV.
Exactly, yes.
I've had people come to me looking to go on Shark Tank with the contracts, and I've had the pleasure of reading these contracts and generally advising them not to go into Shark Tank.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But coming before an angel group is not like going to Shark Tank.
Okay.
So we will generally meet with the individual who has this idea and wants to raise capital. That individual would put information on our website that would be available to our members. We would invite the person to come in and make a presentation to our board or to a screening committee. If the person's not ready, but there's interest, some of our board members would put their arms around the individual, for example, to help them to move on to this next level. Then the individuals would be offered the opportunity to present to the membership as a whole. Assuming there are enough people who have interest to meet the need, then a board member would take the lead, be in effect the lead investor, to do what's called due diligence. And due diligence is basically getting your arms around the legalities of what's being proposed, the structure of what's being proposed, developing a term sheet for what the investor would receive in exchange for the investment. And then you would be able to raise the capital. Now, we've been successful in probably about 12 or 14 instances over the last 4 or 5 years to be able to fund companies through this exercise. And they're varied. They range from a Hofstra student whose idea was to develop a prototype solar-powered cooler that you could take to the beach, filed patents on it. Very creative, was able to raise about $800,000 to help in the development of the product. We have another technology that's being developed at Stony Brook in the Energy Center. The company's idea was to build on an established technology in the heat pump field and be able to apply it in a slightly different way, which would revolutionize the use of heat pumps in areas that they can't really be used today because of climate situations. And the company is now in the prototype phase of testing both heat and air conditioning through a gas-fired heat pump. They've attracted a lot of interest, not only from the angels, the angel network members co-invested with another entrepreneur. The total investment was about $1.5 million. The angels putting in close to $500,000. And that was about 14 angel members that contributed to that venture. In addition, the company received grants from the Department of Energy, from NYSERDA, for another $1.3 million. They've been encouraged to file for additional grants from the government because even the government is so excited about this technology that they're willing to underwrite it. So what that presented was an opportunity for the entrepreneur to get other funding that is what's called non-dilutive, because when the government gives you a grant, it doesn't cost you anything in equity. So you can still be 100% owner and get these grants. And they're out there in many, many fields of technology. There's just a large demand for it. Another company in the software field, a company called eGifter, also funded by the Angel Network, has gone through 2 rounds of funding already. This quarter, they're expected to do $1 million a year in revenue after 3 years. High growth, great opportunity. And founded by a management team that had been very successful in their own business, were able to sell that business and now came up with this as a new idea, a new application. So that here you had an example of partly the idea, but more the management team and their track record was enough to convince the angel groups to get involved. So it's one of these things where if you don't necessarily have the ability, find a manager that can do what you can't do. Company that I'm aware of in the medical field, medical records field, and medical transcription and overall communication, started by a doctor. But the doctor had no software capability. So he has to come to someone like you to develop the software. And he may not have the capital to do that. So maybe an investment opportunity for the software developer to do a sharing arrangement to help build the opportunity. But then he's a doctor. What does he do? He's not a salesman.
Right.
Oh, he has to bring on a sales force, or he brings on a manager, a businessman, who can now grow the idea into a business. That's an ongoing example of monies that have been raised through early stage and continue to be raised today. All of these are situations where the entrepreneur, inventor, business person will come up and demonstrate to a group of people, friends and family, seed capital, angel, whatever level, doesn't matter what level you're at. You need to be able to demonstrate to the person who you are seeking funds from that you're worthy of it, that you know how to handle it properly, and that you can take it and make it more valuable to the person who is making the investment. Because what is the investor interest?
Make money.
Eventually, it's to make money.
Right, exactly.
They are patient people.
Right.
But they are looking for opportunities where they will be able to capitalize handsomely. So it's investing in a Facebook that becomes worth billions of dollars, in a Microsoft, in a Bill Gates, in people who have these creative ideas and the commitment to see them through, and the flexibility to realize that they can't do it themselves, that they will come to groups like this. From the entrepreneur side, I think one of the most important things is that not all money is the same. And so you need to do a little due diligence as well in terms of who you're taking your money from. And what does it mean? There is a lot of chatter about crowdfunding. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's a new wave, a new idea of how do you raise money for something, and they have crowdfunding. Many of these are opportunities where someone will say, I need to raise $100,000, here's my idea. If you give me $100 today, I'll give you the product. And he pre-sells the product to 1,000 people. Okay? Doesn't mean you're going to get anything. Just means that you're willing to gamble $100 on something that looks like a good idea.
On the web.
On the web.
Basically.
Okay. That's what's mostly out there today. What is coming is a little more dangerous in my mind for both the investor and the entrepreneur. And that's the ability through non-public means of advertising to unsophisticated people opportunities to invest in companies. And so you're going to get a little old lady in Wichita to put $500 in your company. Well, the risks are the little old lady in Wichita doesn't help you grow your business. Number one. 1,000 Wichita women, men, don't help you grow your business and make it successful. They also become a potential detriment because after a year or two being unsophisticated, they want to know how come they haven't made their money back. And now you're getting phone calls from 1,000 people asking you, hey, what's happening here? And so I'm not a fan of crowdfunding. And it, in my mind, is the exact opposite of what a startup entrepreneur would want. He wants the guy who has experience in what he's going to do, more so than just a guy who's going to write a check. He needs someone who's going to be able to help him put whatever it is he has into the marketplace. So, as an example, with the heat pump company I mentioned, who does the company reach out to go on their advisory board? Former chairman of National Grid, gas company, knows the business world, knows how it's going to work in the future. He may know nothing about how to make a heat pump, okay? but he has business experience,
Right.
and he has the strategic knowledge
Right.
to help you when the time is right,
Right.
in a way that the next guy who will give you a check can't.
Right. Right.
So you want to seek out those kind of people, whatever field you're in.
Let's summarize the failure, basically. Who an entrepreneur, I mean, in your mind, what is the cause of failure in what is the most significant cause of failure?
Inattentiveness. Inattentiveness.
Inattentiveness.
Again,
okay.
as I said earlier,
Right.
you need to be committed 24/7 to what you're going to do. And if you are inattentive,
Right.
someone else can come in and co-opt you, get a step ahead of you, make a better product than you, and basically take you out of the game.
Okay.
So I think inattentiveness is high up there. Failure to recognize the needs properly. So if you've convinced somebody to put up a few $100,000 and you've told them that as a result you're going to be able to be here, but instead of being here you're still back there, okay? It's a disappointment, and it impairs the ability to raise additional capital to move on, whether it's from the person who made the original investment or others.
Right.
I guess part of inattentiveness is not listening to advisors, people who have experience, who know business, whether it's the specific business you're in or the general business world. Not listening to advice is deadly.
It's deadly, right? Yeah. Mentor is very important, I guess.
Yes.
Right? Mentorship.
Well, being able to be mentored.
Right. Right.
Getting the right mentor is another story, but you can end up with the wrong mentor. It's not your fault, but yes, you could be pointed in the wrong direction.
It could be, right? Yeah.
Your idea could be co-opted and moved in a different direction. There are many stories where what you thought you were going to do in the first instance ends up being something totally different
right.
because it evolves.
Right.
And you have to be able to seize opportunities and evolve what you're doing to satisfy those opportunities. We're in a constantly changing world. It changes faster today than it ever has in the past.
Right. Yep.
And so if you're static, if you're going to just make that same single product in the same single way, then, how many times can you see the same movie?
That's right.
You can see 6 episodes of Star Wars, and maybe 9, but you're not going to see the first episode 9 times.
9 times, right? Exactly. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Yep. And see, in today's world, is very, very different. Like things like Uber. I mean, look at the success of things like Uber, which is simple idea, but
simple idea,
made it great.
Great application.
Right.
Yet to be seen whether it'll be successful. It is trying to get into a world that exists and upset it. And they've had initial success.
Right.
But it remains to be seen whether they will be truly successful over time.
Oh, so you think there is a challenging?
You have
there's a lot of
you
challenges.
have several challenges in a Uber. You have customer use.
Right.
Okay. You have industry acceptance.
Right.
You have competition.
Mm-hmm.
And it's easily replicated.
Mm-hmm.
They are first to market and most knowledgeable.
Right.
But before I ever heard of Uber,
Mm-hmm.
I had 2 software developers that were working for Motorola that came to me with Uber.
Oh, is that right? Oh.
They just couldn't get it to work at the time because they were doing it part-time.
Oh, okay.
You see, there's an example. Good idea,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
people capable of implementing,
Right.
but they were doing it part-time.
Mm-hmm.
They needed to continue to work in their living,
Right.
and so they're working on it after hours. They're tired. They're over the weekend. They have other distractions. So when it got to the point where it was presented to
Right.
investors, who had an interest,
Right, right.
they couldn't show that it worked.
Okay. So they were late in the game, basically, because of they had to leave, basically. They had to earn their money.
They couldn't follow through on their idea.
Well, I really appreciate your time today and good advice that you have given to our viewers. And in our community, there are many entrepreneurs in our community, and they would definitely appreciate your advice today.
Well, I'm glad I could offer whatever guidance, and certainly enjoy being with you and sharing this time and my experiences.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today. If you have any questions, comments, you can email me at rajmitv@gmail.com. That's again rajmitv@gmail.com. You can also watch our prior shows on YouTube at youtube.com/Infosys International. Again, that's youtube.com/Infosys International. Until next time, see you at the same time, same place, right here.